John Shallow, welcome to the pod. Very informal introduction, but welcome to Australia.
I feel like formality would be weird for me. I struggle with formal intros.
Yeah, I used to do them, and then it started to get to a place where like, I don't know when to start. I don't know what to say. So I figured we just go straight into who you are, what you do. And I think everyone that should know does know, and everyone that doesn't, you should know. So we're not going to go there. I'm going to hit you with a bit of a quote of your own because I'd like to dive straight into some business chats today. You once said that business is a game that only you can define the laws of winning. And that makes it a game that is worth playing. Like, what do you find as winning in business?
I mean, of late, I think it's authenticity. Like, I think whatever that is, because authenticity is sustainable. Like, okay. And if you would have asked me that question like a week ago, I may have a different answer. But in just watching the trends in the industry of late, it's being able to set systems in place where your voice becomes more authentic as you scale, not less. So I think if you can do that, and that's something that as a kind of, I don't know, it's been atypically introspective in the last couple of weeks, just almost by, we've had some like new events or new courses launched that are 3-4 years in the making. And that's something that, as a field questions about the development of the business with never having paid direct attention to business as I don't know, an ethos or a thought process. And my business acumen for the last couple of years, is there money in the bank for us to do this? Yes. Okay, sick. We'll do it. Is there not? Okay. When will there be, or how can there be? So that coming out of that introspective month or so is kind of been like, that's probably the thing I'm most proud of, is that, there's branding and culture and all these buzz Silicon Valley startup words they're so often pursued so directly rather than being an indirect byproduct of just trying to be authentic. Like, I think people know enough about business to be dangerous, and they listen to too many podcasts, and they start using words like disruptive and exit, and we'll circle back to this. I had a coach tell me that, we'll circle back to this next week. Like, no, you fucking won't. Like, what are you talking about? Circle back.
Yeah, let me go do my research.
Yeah, so it's, for me, it's like, we've established I think, and we've been told this, that like we established a brand as a byproduct of just being authentic rather than as a byproduct of deliberately trying to establish a brand. And I think that stems from authenticity. And I see now in our space, there's plenty of like lookalikes, and it's just, I think when people are trying to emulate what we do, they don't realize what the value is. It's not our course content. It's not anything. It's like more the people side of things. Like, other than I've had an EA who had to leave, just the workload got too much for her lifestyle. Other than that, for the 8 years we've been in business, we haven't got rid of a single person. And so I think authenticity and building a system that allows you to be more authentic, and almost like a system that keeps you in check. Like, the number of people that would reach out to me if I stepped out of my lane now would be so damaging, not only to me personally, but be so damaging to the business. And I think that's where like a lot of businesses fail, is like they just sort of are trying to catch the trade winds of the latest trends and things like that, where like we talked off air, like, if this all goes away tomorrow, you're still going to find me in the gym. And I think that's the authenticity piece for us that like really bleeds true. And so if I had to, kind of circle back and make like a finer point of it, it would be like, building a system that allows you and your brand to be authentic. And because that way it's like the old Mark Twain thing, right? Like, if you tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. So for us, like, that's kind of like, that's an overarching ethos with everything we do, is like, does it align with like our core values as people? And every single coach that works with us, every instructor, and even down to our students that come into their programs, like, we're all pretty well aligned on just about everything, like life, lifting or otherwise. So that's been really cool to see, just like the thing that everyone chases so deliberately just happening as a byproduct of paying attention to like the values, rather than be like, well, we don't have a mission statement. We don't have like our code written somewhere. We just like, I don't know, we communicate with people we like. We talk open forums about stuff that we think about. And at the end of the day, it's like, wow, we've actually created something that's unique and stands out in a space that, has a lot of copycats. So I think that for us has been, that's been big, to just have that that identifiable, intangible factor, and it just as a byproduct was doing the thing that we like.
I think there's been probably countless occasions, and you probably even did it somewhere in there, where you self-deprecate that you're not a business person. You don't think about business in a way. But I would argue that the fact that you've had no people leave, that people don't leave businesses, they leave business owners, which by definition makes you a fucking good one. And if we use your definition of what is winning and that it is authenticity, would you say you're winning?
So it's weird. Winning would imply, and this is, I'm gonna have to like tread lightly, because I think winning would imply that we have competition. Now, obviously, there's competitors in the space. You know, education as a market is massive worldwide. And the fitness industry, as it intersects with education, is increasingly growing year over year. But we don't. I don't know. Like, I've had competitors on my podcast, and they've been competitors in our space for as long as we've been in business. And other than trying to like get some information on them for like an introduction, I've never been on their website, right? Like it doesn't serve us any to really look around. So yeah, that's tough. Does it feel like we're winning?
If winning is the definition of authenticity,
yeah.
Have you maintained authenticity over the journey?
Without a doubt. Yeah. There's not been a moment where we've stepped out of line. And you know what? In a lot of that, that's a reflection of the people that we have with us, and not necessarily like a come from the top thing from me. Like it's definitely a round table, and everyone at the table, there's no head of the table. Like every single girl that works with us looks out for their own values as an extension of the company. So like if I were to step out of line, I know that every single dude that works with me would be on the phone right away through what the hell. So it's, I think by that definition, like we have been completely uncompromising for 8 years. Like,
is that by design though? Or is it if we're sitting here saying that it's not top down mentality and it's round table, that would assume that it's happenstance and just the people have been attracted by chance. Where I'd argue, having spent even time with you over Zoom, you govern a standard that is subtle, that is not outspoken, but it is clear.
I think if I were to try and put a point on that, I would just say it comes down to experience. Like fuck, these are tough. Well, I don't like talking about business. Like I'm not an advocate for tooting my own horn, but
there it is.
I mean, I'm 33 years old and I've probably done more boots on the ground work in different aspects of this industry at the highest level than anyone I can think of. And I've been told that by people who have been in the various professions that I intersect that are, twice my age, right? Like, fuck, I'm not going to go into the resume, but so here's maybe an example. Like we just released our level 3 course, which is like a unique opportunity for coaches who understand all the theory, but need to put it in practice in a high stakes environment. So through my network, personal and professional, I've aligned with an organization and some coaches that oversee NFL, so gridiron football, preseason training, NCAA combine prep training for the NFL, NBA pre-draft training, NHL off-season training, Major League Baseball off-season training. So through those networks, I've got to work with, we worked with a kid the other day. I'm not going to name his name, but if you guys know baseball, the entirety of his contract is worth $496 million. So
over what year period?
12. Yeah. So I think we've offered an environment to really acid test your knowledge where it matters and in high stakes. And that was off the backs of 4 or 5 years of really heavily diving into the strength and conditioning world. And that was born of, I started training Olympic athletes in Canada in 2012, no, earlier than that, 2010 in my undergrad. So already kind of like ahead of the curve. And then I worked at, a really prominent NCAA. I worked at Stanford University as a strength and conditioning coach. And then I worked at Apple as a chiropractor. So like Apple World Headquarters. And so for me, like, I think, and I was just having this conversation with one of our coaches today, as I have another opportunity kind of in the pro sports world with a team, and fingers crossed, knock on wood, everything goes. I've never once taken a step back as a judicious business decision. I've always taken a step forward and left sort of a shoe to fill. And that was something big with me, because I couldn't just, we could do the calculation of time for money and like, well, based off of the decisions that have to be made in the company or the athletes that I work with, I'm not going to do any task that doesn't yield X number of dollars. But for the longest time, like you wore so many hats for so long that I taught, developed, wrote textbooks for while traveling to, I don't know, I've been in 67 countries in the last couple of years. I average 200,000 kilometers in the air every year. And every single time that there's an opportunity that opens up, it's because I'm not sitting back and be like, well, this is above me. It's, hey man, like, dude, would you mind teaching like the level 1? I have to take a concierge role with this pro athlete and I need to be in Wimbledon next week. So I got to work with this guy and go live with him. So like, oh fuck, dude. Like, so I'm coming to my guys, like asking for favors. I'm not going back like, I'd rather sit and chill and, just sit in the Scrooge McDuck money vault and count my winnings. It's just like, dude, I'm running 1,000 miles an hour and I would never step away from something without stepping into something bigger. Because that's the storyline. Like that's a story arc of like, especially in education, it's like, that's what we're selling. Like that is part of what I think has put me in these rooms and these situations and open up these opportunities for, just bigger and better things, is like, I can go into a room and I can deliver on the core product, which is, for me, it's biomechanics applied, or functional anatomy applied biomechanics. And whether that's, getting an athlete that you've just met who's going to sign you to a contract where you're going to live with this guy and you're going to travel with him, like, or all around the world. You're going to be his shadow. You're going to be his bodyguard. You're going to be his fucking drug dealer. Like, it's just, there's a lot of moving parts to it. But at the end of the day, the confidence from that athlete is born, or the team, or the agency, or the parent. That's born of a competency, right? That's born of my ability to communicate and deliver to the person that's in front of me in a way they'll understand, to teach them what I know, what I do, and how that can help and benefit in the long term or short term or medium term, the person that I'd be representing, training, or treating. So if I took a step back and was like, well, the level 1 is doing this, I shouldn't be teaching it anymore because business. It's like, no, like, hey man, I gotta do the L2, or hey, I got this medical director role here, or hey, I gotta do preseason training camp for this pro hockey team, or I gotta go work with this pro tennis player, or whatever it is. So I think that's where if it were to stem from anywhere, it would be the fact that I never step back. I'm always trying to step into something, and then that in its wake leaves a storyline of like, okay, if we can know and deliver on this type of information, we can start to build opportunities, and our education platform can be an accelerant. And through the product line, and as I've accelerated sort of through these different opportunities, we're seeing that to be the case.
I think you actually just made a more clear definition of what a real business owner is than what most people would assume. I think in the world and the landscape that we work in now, whether it be fitness industry or otherwise, business is normally, at least in the way I see it, seem to be this thing that the more scale you get, the more freedom you are given, and the more opportunity that is afforded your way. And at least from what I've seen, those that follow that path, that as they scale, they just choose freedom, and then they choose lazy, and then they choose nothing, the business reach a point of scale that they won't ever break. And it's that constant stepping into something new. If you buy back time, you have to do something with that time, or you're now less profitable, because your time was fucking free. Like, at the end of the day, if the business doesn't make money, you're not making money. And if more business owners took that approach, not only I think they would scale, like you guys have scaled year in, year out. And I think, like, probably anecdotally, I can say maybe 3 years ago, there was like a cult-like essence around PSR1 that every person was adding it to their bio on Instagram. Every person was tagging, sharing. It was like a thing to be shared by Jordan Scheller. Like, if you got tagged, like, it was like, fuck, you're an OG. And that I don't see that being maybe accidental, maybe unintentional initially, but the sheer fact that it has happened that way has been a direct responsibility of you stepping into something new every fucking time, so that your team behind you can grow and do what they need to. I say that only to give context, I guess, to the next question, that you often say, like, I'm not a business owner, but you've just given a far clearer and better definition of what scale really fucking looks like in real business than what most do, especially in our industry. Why do you have such an aversion to say you're a business owner?
Because I'm not a business owner.
Why?
Because I'm too busy on the next thing that's nothing to do with business. Now, yeah, no, I'm not. Like, I'm really not.
Then I challenge you to say, and I'll use a quote on you again, try trying.
Okay.
Like, what happens if you were to try being a businessman? Where does the business go?
To an inauthentic place.
Okay.
Right. And I think, so look, I grew up real broke, and and it wasn't a byproduct of my parents, but I kind of grew up with people who had money were bad.
Yeah.
Because like my parents worked for people who had money, and my parents always came home like after, you know, fucking 14-hour days. And it's like trying to, the thing is, I didn't know I was broke as a kid. So my parents did a really good job of insulating me from that. And it wasn't until I went to grad school that I was like, wait, hold on.
How the fuck did this happen?
You didn't get a gun pulled on you when you were 12? Like, I thought that happened to everyone.
Yeah.
Like,
but also, like, how are you given the life you were given? Like, how are you in a fucking grad school? Like, if things were that bad, like, I look at the shit my parents did. Like, me and my sister, we every year had presents under the tree. We went on holidays. Like, they were on fucking minimum wage.
Yeah.
Like,
so I mean, kind of a backstory. I'm only in the position I'm in because my sister's super smart. Like, there's only enough money in the family for one of us to go to school, like university, post high school. It's oddly enough that we're doing a podcast. I remember telling my grade 10 math teacher, who was like a friend of, who was like a friend of the family, had taught my sister, who was a couple years older than me. My parents had a good relationship, just parent teacher and me, all that shit. You know, my parents looked to him and was like, can you like figure out what this kid's gonna do for a living? Like, you know, we just had the guitar. I really like playing guitar, really like music, as in like kind of old school rock stuff. And I swear to God, I told Matt Wilson, my 10th grade math teacher, that I was gonna be a radio DJ. Because like there was no real future for me, right? Like I knew that there was a pool of money. My sister was like a pedigree swimmer. Like she end up going to Olympic trials for the Beijing Olympics. She swam NCAA, and it was her getting a full ride scholarship that opened up that pool of money for me to go to school. So it wasn't until I was almost done high school that, you know, she was, you know, kind of financially taken care of by the school she went to in the States, that even getting an undergrad was on the table. Yeah, okay. So I actually started studying history and political science. It's just something I have a pretty good memory, and it was something that I just took to really quickly, remembering facts and dates, and then sort of like telling your own story over the top of it. And so that's where the anti-business owner ethos, I think, really stems from, like from just growing up around like, I don't want to, like, you know, finances. Yeah. Like we check in and we know our numbers and we're diligent on that end, but it's, to me, and it kind of speaks to a lot of the way I look at the things that we teach. It's like the subjective drives the objective, right? Like for me and my job, like, you know, in kind of having like a uniquely trained coach's eye, let's say, when people are looking at 40 times or vertical jumps or max velocities, they're seeing really objective metrics, but my job is to look, what are the qualitative means that make the objective outcomes, right? And that's like improving the subjective, where things look and feel better, right? These sensory inputs, which is actually like the topic of the book I'm writing, is how muscles play a role in sensory input, and they're our second largest sensory organ next to our eyes. It's like, how can you visually qualify something and then correlate that strongly to an increase in quantifiable numbers? So for me, it's you know, I'm always trying to push the subjective side, right? Like I don't like looking at our bottom lines, because to me it's too close. I use the analogy of Patch Adams. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Patch Adams. You ever seen that with Robin Williams? Missing out. What have you done, dog? COVID in Australia? You haven't watched Patch Adams? So there's this fucking crazy polymathic guy. You know, Robin Williams is all sad and shit, and he ends up like trying to off himself, puts himself in a psych ward, and he recognizes one of the old dudes in the psych ward. He's like, oh, isn't that like he didn't win like a Nobel Prize or something for math? He's like, yeah, the guy like lost his mind. And this old guy like comes up to him and he's like, how many fingers do you see? And he holds like 4 fingers up to his face, and the camera does this like sleight of hand, or this little visual trick where at the beginning of the movie they're just showing the 4 fingers, and he goes, I don't know, 4, like, you fucking crazy old man, I thought this guy used to be smart, what the fuck? And at the end of the movie, it's sort of like this philosophical coming of age where he looks past the 4 fingers at the guy, and as he looks past, the camera like duplicates and sort of blurs the fingers, so there's 8. So he's like looking past the objective and looking at the person, and then he goes to the guy and he goes, oh, 8. And then the guy's like, you get it now. And he was too busy, like he was too close to the problem. So I feel like for me, it's, you know, I'm running and gunning. That's been like the foundation of the business. Like, you know, the old Facebook moniker, move fast and break shit. Like that was bestowed upon me by one of my former business partners who worked in the Silicon Valley. So I can't be too close to the problem. Like I always have to be like, what's the next opportunity? Like what's the next point of leverage? What's the next room I'm in? Like where can I be best served? And like, I think if I had a business sense in my body, it was it's picking the right partners who will let me do that. And so, you know, these things get done, like our books get balanced, our P&Ls get done, like, you know, our strategy gets put in place and implemented and executed really well. But if I have to, you know, there's an off chance at some point, and not now, I have my phone off, but my phone could ring any point this weekend and I'm going to have to fly from here to New York City. That's like a real possibility. Like, we're on second interviews with this thing and I don't have to blink. I can walk downstairs, I can get in an Uber, I can go to my business partner and be like, hey, I got to go so-and-so team. And he's like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. We'll hold it down. Right. So that I think if I had, and that is by happenstance. By happenstance, 13 years ago, I walked into my first lecture of grad school and there was a fucking cauliflower-eared tough son of a bitch from Dallas, Pennsylvania, that was into barbell sports, that really didn't like being a chiropractor, that just wanted to lift weights and help people. Like, that was pure luck. And I think that's one thing I dislike about the business space, especially that intersects with fitness, is it's just like a complete disregard for how life works. Right? Like, I don't think many people in fitness have a worldview.
I agree.
Right. And it's hard, right? I don't think maybe many people in general might not have a worldview because you might not have time, right? Like, you have fucking, you got a wife and 2 kids, you're trying to put food on the table. Like, my parents don't have a worldview. They had 2 kids and no money. They're not sitting there like pontificating Marcus Aurelius or some bullshit, right? They're like, oh, I fucking craft dinner and ketchup. Like, okay, sweet. That's my worldview. My worldview is my kids are fed. But for me, it's like, there's such an element of randomness that goes so massively understated by people who are successful. And I'm not saying like don't work hard, and I'm not saying unsuccessful people don't work hard, and I'm definitely not saying successful people work hard, but the intersection of randomness and hard work, like, don't discount, you know, there's the old ethos of like, you know, you create your own luck, but there's still like, it's so fucking random. Like, are you, the very fact that we're here in the grand scheme of like the universe, however old you think it is in itself proof of just how random this all is. So one of the other pushbacks I have with business, other than like a general aversion to like, I have no use for it. Like, I mean, yeah, it's cool to like be comfortable when I fly and get to go places and have freedom of time and space. But other than that, like, I don't know, I'm not like a super flashy dude or anything like that. My flashy things are like, my phone's going to have to ring, or my phone rings, I have to go. Right. Yeah. Like, that to me is like, to be of service at a high level, like to be a problem solver and solve problems that people think only I can solve, which, like, I don't know, maybe I can, maybe I can't, but there's at least trust enough in my ability to be resourceful and a track record of me being able to solve problems. Like, that to me is like, that's what I'm after. Like, I'm after the bat signal. I'm after like when all else fails and it's 4th and long and someone needs to get back in the game. Like, I want that. Yeah. Right. Cause to me, it's a, like, how do you measure passion? It's like, well, have you done more in that thing than other people? Right. And have you done it well? And have you done it with a level of introspection and awareness that allow you to improve on your processes? Right. Like, have you been collecting data, and are you analytical, and are you critical of yourself? And can you succumb to your own criticisms to be better? I love this quote from a James Bond movie, but age is no sign of experience, and youth is no sign of innovation. So for me, like, I'm still fairly young in the field, but I've been putting myself in environments as to not get too comfortable. Like, if I work with too many football players, I'm like, fuck, okay, like, let me reach out to my baseball guys and see how they're doing. Like, yeah. So it's, you know, there's a lot of pushback as to why I don't think I'm a business owner. Like, I think the business is a byproduct of people, right? Like, the values piece is huge. Every guy and girl on our team, you know, has belief in the vision, has belief in like our ability to leave this industry different than the way we found it, which I think is unwavering. But the only way that they're bought into that, you know, we talk openly about potential exit strategies and all that. And it's something that I kind of think, should I be like airing this out to, you know, our coaches on staff? But it's like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, cause when we go, I'm taking them with me. Right. Because these people are, you know, they're the consistency of the vision, the likelihood that we've put together this team of people across the world, all with different backgrounds, but it's that's the thing. And the only way I can prove that is by taking these opportunities, right? Like, you can't lead from anywhere else but the front. And it's not, and I never look back. Like, I don't look back. Like, I don't see leadership as a quality of mine. I see it as like potentially a byproduct of my ability to do things or willingness to do things that other people aren't willing to do.
It's also an adaptation cycle. Like, without leadership, you wouldn't grow you wouldn't make that step to move into that next thing. It's like, I don't think leadership is one of those things that you can just choose to become a leader. I think it's something that has to be just earned through forging in fire. Like no one can just be a leader.
Oh, no, wait, no, you got to read a Jocko book. Read a Jocko book. You'll be a leader. No, it's true, man. Like, yeah, I mean, people always want the credit, but no one ever wants to take the blame. That's my thing. It's like, I'm so used to shoveling shit and taking the blame and taking the heat when things go wrong. That's, to me, leadership is being able to take the blame and keep moving forward.
Yeah. Right. But even then, like I say to the team all the time, it's like, I give credit, take blame, but even when it's not my fault, it's still my problem.
Yeah.
So like at the end of the day, the person that's there that can solve the problems the most and the fastest, that's definition of leader.
Yeah.
Like, and I think there's leadership at different roles too. Like, I'm not just talking like, COO, CFO, like, yeah, sure, they have seniority positions, but from what I've seen within your team of people, there are very clear leaders, even in their own field and what they do, but just how they hold themselves within Prescript as a company. Is that something that you try and, I guess, bottle that radicalized luck, that, you know, this randomness that you try and find? Is that something that's intentionally coached into them, or is that something they come to you with?
I think everyone comes to us with an intersection and a dimension. And I think that's one of the unique things about the people we have with us is, like, it's so rare I find myself at a table with our coaches and we're talking about fitness. Like, we were talking, this is going to sound insane, but like Phil Smith, brilliant, probably when it comes to, like, when I have problems with athletes, and I think there's usually a nutritional component, I call him.
Yep.
So like when I'm consulting, so Phil's clients a lot of times are my clients, as far as like, and he obviously has a very successful business outside of, you know, having a douchebag friend who needs a bunch of favors. But, you know, Phil and I were in a Uber the other day, yesterday, and we were discussing the fundamental differences historically between Shia and Sunni Muslims, like how the four caliphs that followed the Prophet, and how Shiism is a belief system born of one of the caliphs, and that Sunni, which is like kind of the more classical version of Islam, is born out of the succession of caliphs that followed the Prophet. Like, that's what we talked about for 45 minutes in the car. We didn't talk about macronutrients. We didn't talk about pre-workouts or anything like that. So I think everyone comes to us both extracurricularly, like just things in their lives that they find interesting, with a dimension that's unique, and then also multidisciplinary within the field, right? Like, we have Baxter's right outside the door, you know, physiotherapist, problem solver, physical problem solver. You know, we have Killian Hamilton, who's, you know, he's a doer, he's an experimenter. So whether it's, you know, like, hey, I've been getting posed a lot of problems or questions around mixed martial arts. So he'll pick up jiu-jitsu for a year and do it. Like, hey, we're going in terms of, okay, cool. I'm going to clock my 40 time, learn how to sprint, do that for a year, right? Like, each one of them has so much dimension. And I think more importantly of the two, so much dimension outside of the realm of fitness, which allows them to think laterally and solve problems. And then within fitness themselves, they have an expertise, a niche, if you will, in a sub-discipline of fitness that is standalone. They are standalone experts worldwide in that. You know, we have two nutrition coaches. One is Dwayne Jackson, Dr. Dwayne Jackson, you know, double PhD from Yale University, tenure professor, University of Western Ontario School of Medicine, you know, one of the world leaders in medical biophysics. He teaches nutrition for us, which is like insane. Like, I approach this guy looking like this. I was like, hey, bro, like the way nutrition for me, like the way you move, and then Phil, obviously, right? And both of them have, you know, if you want to talk Eckhart Tolle and philosophy, like, dude, talk to the guy who fucking like blasted his kidneys to oblivion as a bodybuilder, making drugs in a university lab while teaching and lecturing all over the world, and then, you know, who had to get a kidney transplant from one of his closest friends and is now in his mid 50s, and, like, you know, this eccentric, energetic, you know, stoic, just great friend, philosopher, like the guy who's going to text you when he doesn't know you're not feeling good, but he's going to text you a heart emoji out of nowhere. Like, I don't know anything about nutrition, and right, like, I eat beef and rice all day, but like, I know that about him, right? I know that, like, he gives a shit. Yeah. Right? And I think if there was a common thread that ties all these people and their value sets, or the value set might be one of the things that ties them all together, but all of their interests and their quirks, and it's an intangible I don't think you can teach, is like giving a shit, which is so fucking crazy to me that is in our industry. That's where a lot of the authenticity stems from, is just a wantingness to be of service. Yeah. Right. So I think, the multidimensional, the intersection of extracurricular, as well as the specialty sub niche that each person brings to the table, it's like a really unique mosaic of skills and abilities and interests. And yeah, it's the people will make it for sure.
I have a bit of a sidestep, a bit of a backwards question. You've got now PSL1, PSL2, now PSL3, which is somewhat revolutionizing the process of education for people in our industry. Was that always the goal? Or was there a point in your journey where you realized gap in the market need to fill, or was it just there was demand?
Probably more demand. So we started off, Jordan and I, to commiserating recent graduates of a chiropractic program living in the most expensive place to live in the world. Like when we were going to school, the rent in San Jose, California, the average house of a price crossed $1 million for the first time anywhere in the world. This is 2011. So like the average house price was $1 million US in the Silicon Valley, because Apple's there and Facebook's there and Twitter's there and Pinterest is there and Salesforce is there. Like starting salaries are 250, 300,000. That was back then. God knows what they're now. So we started just identifying like where we could provide value essentially. Now we didn't know we were doing this at the time. All we knew was we were broke. And we had a geographical bottleneck and a really backwards business model of being good at our jobs at a really young age. And I think that was just a byproduct of that we were passionate about training. Right? We had to solve our own more complex problems because our problems were more complex. Like he was one of the top CrossFit Games regional athletes in the state of California and in America. And I was, a higher level power lifter. So it wasn't like, there was a market that left untapped. There was a market of one, right? Like Peter Thielism. And we had to solve our own problem. But like we realized that, look, there's not many us. And there was actually, if there was a place that had a higher concentration of us as far as skill set goes, it was the Bay Area in California, right? Like a hub of CrossFit, one of like the early, it was Santa Cruz, California was where Glassman lived for years and was where headquarters was. And then as far as strong powerlifters, Mark Bell was right up the road. I trained with Dan Green. Like the majority of world records in powerlifting were there, but that wasn't enough to pay our bills and our student debt off. So it's like, we kind of looked like, okay. And we did this. This was like kind of as we would commiserate how the fuck we're going to make more money. It's like, we knew online was going to be it. Right. But like, what was our value proposition? Like what was the problem that we could solve better and quicker or more expedient, maybe better as a byproduct of expediency than other people? And it was like, well, we seem to be able to manage injuries for higher level competitors, athletes, people of a greater level of strength better than other people. We just had a different approach through our own experience. So we're like, okay, well, so we actually started off in the training space. So our first products were programs that were meant to help improve like shoulder pain or knee pain or back pain. So we kind of started with our 3 core products that were very niche. Like, we'd get DMs like, oh, my knee hurts squatting. What do I do? So we created a video library. We put together these programs in succession. And it wasn't until I just enjoyed putting out educational content really out of spite, because I just thought a lot of people were wrong. like actually that was like, I watch other physical therapists and chiropractors like put stuff up. I'm like, it's like so bullshit. Like that would never work for me. So, an antidote to a bad idea is a better idea. So rather than and don't get me wrong, for years, I was very anti-social media, and I would just sit in the background and stew and just be like, man, this guy's stupid. Fuck this guy. It's like, well, you're the one who's like really poor. So maybe you're stupid. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so I bid on the social media thing. So as we're releasing these products, I was starting to do educational content out of spite, pure spite. I was like, no, like this is how it works. Mm-hmm. And then, I was reached out to by a gym franchise in Canada, Good Life. I don't know if there's a direct affiliation to the Australian counterpart, but it's similar in scale. There was about 400 clubs and 5,000 trainers when they reached out to me. And in a part of me sort of coming of age and being a little bit less angry, a little bit less spiteful about stuff that I would read online, blog posts and articles and stuff, I actually started writing a book, not knowing at the time that the book would end up being the Prescript Level 1 textbook in its complete form. And these people at Good Life, the overseers of the education, the internal education system, they'd reached out to me. Now I worked for the gym as a kid. I was a personal trainer there when I was, I don't know, 16. And so they came to me and were like, well, we'd like to create an internal curriculum. We follow you on Instagram. It would be something you'd be interested in doing. I was like, fuck yeah, like sick. Let's give it a go. I had done a few seminars up until that point, really, and we were talking about this on the way in, to finance my powerlifting career. So being good enough at powerlifting is what brought me to Australia the first time. But one of the incentives of coming out here to compete was when I got the invitation to compete at the Arnold's. The coordinator was like, well, we can host seminars for you, because they saw that I was doing educational content on Instagram, and maybe just assumed, so you can sell tickets and that'll help offset your cost of you flying over to compete. And I was like, seminar, like, what the fuck is that? So I did 3 seminars, 3 3-hour seminars, 2 in Melbourne and 1 in Brisbane. And that is really what started to steamroll that. So, we wrote, as I was writing my book and competing and doing these, ragtag seminars, then the corporate world sort of took notice and asked me if I could put something together. And because I had aggregated a lot of my angry thoughts on paper already, I turned it around really quickly. I turned around, 2 weekend courses for this company in the matter of a couple of days. Like, oh, we thought this was going to take like a few months. I was like, well, it's done now. So what do you think? They're like, can you do one next month? Then I had another thing, a similar agreement with an international franchise called Ultimate Performance. There's actually one here in Sydney. Yep. So about 1920 across the world. And so I started doing these exclusive teaching weekends, going back and forth between Halifax, Nova Scotia and Singapore, and then back to Edmonton, Alberta, and then Sydney. Like, I was just fucking, it was so stupid, but like, I just had to go, right? Yeah. Wherever they wanted me, whenever they wanted me. And it created a vacuum. Now, mind you, at the time, we're still selling training products, but you started to listen to the inquiries of like, well, man, I'd love to sit in. It's like, well, if you're not a trainer at one of these 2 gyms in Canada or, these 20 countries around the world, like, there's nothing I can really do. And I was like, well, that doesn't really sound like a good solution to their problem. And I didn't have exclusivity agreements with either of the gyms. So I kind of like started to, and they were specific, like, we want this type of course, and this type of course. I'm like, okay, like I'll make that work as best as I can to fit into the model that you have. But I've like started thinking, like, well, what is a needs analysis of the industry at large, right? And then that's where the level 1 was kind of born of like, well, how can I provide value at scale? Like, how can we have a meta impact on the industry? And it wasn't through, this corporate vessel that was sort of just filling holes. It was like, if I were to say what I wanted to say, if I were to write the course that I wish I took 15 years ago when I started training, what would it entail? And that was really the essence of the level 1. So we'd actually seen a shift in the primary core of the business, like probably 3 years in. Training has not been on our radar since 2018, late 2018 or 2017 maybe. So no, it wasn't always education. Now, once we moved towards education, did we start to gain clarity like really quickly? Yeah. Like, we started to understand, like, I came up under Paul Quinn. It's like level 1, level 2, level 3, like PICP level 1, level 2, level 3. That just seemed like a good starting point, not knowing the end point would be what it is now as far as our product line, but the skeleton of it, the structure of it definitely was hardwired in my brain when we came up with level 1. Like, I didn't want it to be a mentorship. I didn't want it to be a Jordan Shallow thing. Even when I got these early contracts, like, Good Life came to me as like at the _muscle_ so doc, like with douchebag. I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And when I wrote the agreement, it was pre-script. Yep. When I made the marketing material, it was pre-script. Same thing with Ultimate Performance. Like, Nick Mitchell and I have a great relationship, and I was talking to him in Los Angeles. He goes, the only other person that at that point had taught for him was Charles, and I was a huge Paul Quinn fan, and he'd offer me this. I was like, yeah, dude, fuck, done. That's such an honor. And but pre-script, like, yeah. So I think if there was some foresight from a business perspective, it would have been that. Like, to this day, it's still about putting the brand first. I understand my role as a founder and like a spokesman, talking head, probably a better word, for the brand, but it's definitely like putting the brand first. So, I think having, for us, it's really just been about leverage. Like, and I, as I talked about business more now, just given the state of the business and maybe just reverse engineering how we got here, but again, I'm not a business guy. I'll die on that hill. The one thing I'll
get you to admit it one
the
day.
one thing I've been advising people is like your best opportunity to get to where you want to go is by taking the taking the opportunity where you have the greatest amount of leverage in front of you, right? And then just compounding that leverage over time. Like that's what I've done. Like the second I've got every big opportunity I have, the second the ink is dry on whatever the employment contract is, or the athlete deal is, or the brand deal is, whatever it is, the unfortunate reality is the next thought in my head is like, okay, what's next? Like how does this then change my future in negotiating, right? So now I can sit in and I can look back on 10 years of really luck and leverage, understanding like how these cards can be played, and I can be like, well, this is how I've got here.
Yep.
Right. But to move forward, it's like, I'm looking at, and I have to be more strategic now because the stakes are higher, but I have to understand like, what are the rooms I need to be in where I can provide the greatest amount of value, right? What is value? It's like, what are the most complex solutions I can bring to the table faster than anyone else? And like these rooms they're more and more specific, and it takes a little bit more and more for me to get into these rooms. But really, when I want to talk like return on investment of my time and stepping forward and from a leadership perspective rather than stepping aside, that's really like, that's been the catalyst to, if I have success as a business owner, that's what it is. And that's like, I'll impart that until I'm blue in the face. Like if I had a principle that I think people should practice in business, is like really getting clear on what are your skill sets and what rooms do you need to be in to be the smartest guy in the room, right? Like there's this weird like forever student white belt mentality. It's like, look, man, when the fucking house is on fire, I want a goddamn fireman who knows what the fuck he's doing, right? I don't want a white belt. I don't want like, always learning. I was like, dude, get me out of this fucking burning building, right? And so that's, for me, it's like, that might be a part of leadership. I might just have an inane lack of humility for how much fucking sleepless nights I've had doing the damn thing, where it's like, I know I'll be able to solve the problem. Yeah. And so for me, that's something that I, when I talk to our coaches, that come through our program and they ask me and like hold my feet to the fire, like, okay, look, like you're in a position, like you have to know something about business. I've kind of distilled that principle of like, figure out where your greatest point of leverage is and lean on it. And then when you get in that position, what does that afford you as your next greatest opportunity for leverage? Yeah.
I think there's so many times when I have conversations with coaches that are like on the way up and they're trying to, I guess, break into a new room, right? They're like, oh, fuck, I'm sick of the room I'm in. I don't want to train the Sallys on a Monday morning that are just coming to me to have an adult conversation because they're sick of their children. All the Gen Pop clients, right? And they get to this point where I'm sick of being in these Gen Pop rooms. So I want to elevate. I want to start training different people. So therefore, it's a change, it's a process. But I say to them all the time, like, you haven't clocked that room yet. Like, you're not full, right? And you're trying to like run before you can walk. And there's this, I guess, this status orientated around our industry of like the higher you go up the echelon of clientele, the more you will make. And it's not always fucking true. And I think that's it's very crucial for people to understand that even like you might be talking about strategic rooms of like, okay, how do you get into different athlete centers, or how do you get your brand into a higher and higher, I guess, gross volume of students and so on and so forth. It's the same at every level, although there are levels to it. It's the same concept. Like, stay in the room where you're a fucking expert and you'll probably make some money. And
embrace the fact that you're an expert, right? Like I'm very happy with the product line we've put in place, and there's a deliberate metaphor in the spine of our curriculum, which is level 1, 2, and 3. So we just completed our first level 3 in Tampa Bay like last week before I flew out.
Congratulations.
And yeah, no, dude, like words can't really describe what that week meant, because it was 3.5, 4 years of relationships, built off of trust and common values, but also, strategy and social engineering and understanding the market. But our level 1 textbook, wrote it cover to cover fucking 10 times. I literally just sent a different PDF for our next print. And this book has been written for 7 years. Right. So it's constantly updated. It's like the fucking Golden Gate Bridge. It's the most annoying fucking thing in the world. Every time I have one in my hand, I have a fucking duffel bag that I had to bring over. It makes me nauseous, sick to my stomach. But level 2, same fucking thing. been around for 3 or 4 years, wrote it cover to cover, design process, everything, like all the way down to the fucking spine of the book. Like every square inch of that book, I've had a fucking hand in the part of it. Level 3 is a notebook. Your turn.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
So that's our product line. It's like, I hate the idea of the planned obsolescence of education. Because it just entails that you're not where you need to be because you don't know enough. It's like, no,
and you can't be critical either.
There's a point in which you got to fucking put the pen down, guys.
Yeah.
Right. Like you got to put the book down and you got to start writing your own story. So like for us, it's the same cover, same different colorways and schemes. And we've gone through fucking a million iterations of this, but when they walk up and they're about to go into a room with, we'll have 4 first rounders in the NFL draft this year. One of them is 6'6", 365 pounds. And inside of 10 yards, he's the most dangerous thing on the planet. Like it's basically polar bears and this fucking kid. But that's what they open this thing up looking for the answers, and it's blank pages. It's like, exactly. Right. So for us, it's really a matter of like, some people have that, that confidence in their ability just as a personality, but some people can learn it. And I think that the competency is the underlying vein that really drives confidence. Like if you can solve these problems, then you can be confident in your approach. And for me, like that's something that like we want people to leave with. It's like, because that'll get recognized in the industry. Oh, you have a level 3. This guy's a problem solver. Yep. You can put him in a room, right? Because like it's so funny. I so often, like we're about to do a 2-day weekend course here, and I will spend the majority of that time denouncing the value of 2-day weekend courses, right? But this is a means to an end. Like I'll start every digital level 1 semester off with, you mentioned like the PSL1 in the bio. I mention beginning of every single semester, I do not give a fuck about the initials after your name if your name stands for nothing, right? I'd rather, like if I have, and I've done this, if people engage in inane back and forths about biomechanics, like if you're looking to weaponize information, this is not the course for you. This is not the place for you. This is not the industry for you. Take that shit somewhere else. I will fucking have my assistant refund your money. I will pay you to leave. I'll pay you extra to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, well, because bro, you look at the world we live in, so many people are fucking so happy to have a debate with delayed return. Like a debate on social media where you can sit down and get your ducks in a row and then get back with a fucking response. Like, okay, not the place.
Yeah, I mean, we might make level 4 just a fight club. I think that might be pretty good.
You don't talk about fight club, bro.
Fine. I'll just punch people in the face then. But I think that's what you're missing. It's like, I grew up in a place where you didn't have the luxury to get your ducks in a row because, you're going to get punched in the side.
Sometimes you're going to be punched.
But it's also, to me, it's like, did you get in this industry to help people or be right? And sometimes when you understand coaching, those two things are not the same.
Very true.
Right. So that's from like, and don't get me wrong. Like I got an ex-wife out there who knows how right I like to be. Like I'll argue to the fucking cows come home if I think I'm right, to a fault, obviously, and to a divorce. But, at the end of the day, I want to help people just a little bit more than I want to be right. Now in a perfect world, we might be able to do both. But at the end of the day, like the semantics of like exercise, it's like, look, you program computers, you coach people, right? And no matter what, I ran into Tony Doherty the other day, and he has like one of my favorite quotes. He's like, regardless of what business you're in, you're always in the people business, right? So there's a genuine, like, I do not care. Like, because if that's the legacy that the industry leaves, it's like, oh, okay, it's a little bit better now. Like, there's less infighting. Like, I will not stand for it. I don't care. I'll ring up my own guys. I'll ring up myself. Like, the number of like comments back to people that I wrote and then just deleted and then wrote and deleted and wrote and deleted. Like, I'm petty as fuck. Yeah. And I'll throw hands. Like, I literally met, there's a kid in Australia who was like talking mad shit, and I'd be like, oh, I'll see you soon. It's like, I will fucking show up to your gym and like, we'll talk about it if you want, or we'll fight in the parking lot if you want. But to me, it's just like, can we instill passively by example those values that we instill? And I think that's like, again, to kind of circle back to brand, like that's our main focus. The biomechanics and all that stuff, it's a vehicle of that. Like, it's so sad that like, we can, like, honestly, I look at the success of the company and I think, fuck, I don't want to say it was easy, but the things that I think have really moved the needle for us are the differentiating factors, like not being a shitbag. Like, is that really where we're at? Is like, that's how you can stand out? That's the standard? Yeah. But I mean, if that's what it has to be, like, fuck, man, like, if that's what winning is, I'll take that. I'll take that dub all day.
And I won't hold your feet to the fire and try and make you be a business guy. So the people at home can read between the lines and find the lesson, because I'm sure there will be one. What do you feel like the biggest inflection point for Prescript as a brand created the most amount of return in leverage or growth?
That's tough. I would say from a personal standpoint, and this might be selfish because I really like to travel, but I think I might really like to travel because of the inflections it's given us. Like,
For example,
like we talked about before, like the resourcefulness that comes with having a real social network, not a digital one, I think it's been huge. Like, there's phone, and it's not even about the phone numbers or the connections or the in case of emergency break glass favors I can call in. It's I think it just comes down to communication. Like, I think people, when you're in a room with them, they understand your intent. They know, like, everyone knows when they're being fucking lied to, man. Everyone knows you're in a room where you're like, that guy's full of shit. And luckily for me, I've like just been in a room. Like, I've had more business meetings wearing cutoff t-shirts and doing bicep curls than I probably won't take a meeting that's not that at this point. Yeah. Right? Because it's like I said before, like at the end of the day, man, if this all goes away tomorrow, I'm going to be downstairs in the gym. Hopefully you're a gym, but like, and I think that's what people want. Like, I don't think it's often that people find something that they're passionate about, let alone something that they're passionate about that intersects with their ability to earn a living and survive. So I think that has been the thing for us, and it's something that the external environment dictates the internal demand. That's a uniform metaphysic, regardless of what you're talking about, right? That could I could listen to a biomechanist, I could listen to a nutritionist, I could talk to a psychotherapist. They would all probably agree with that as an overarching statement. So personally for me, it's like the travel component has so many layers to its benefit and the inflection point. Like, one thing I'll get a lot is like, man, I don't know how you do it. And it's like, okay, then don't. Right. Yeah. And it's not out of a place of, like I'm better or something. Like, dude, I was running scared. There was a point, I've told this story before, like I had so little money. I was living out of my car at the San Francisco International Airport. Now, again, to get back to the fact that when this is all said and done, like, I'm going to still be in the gym. I used to look at my bank account and be like, okay, if I drive to the grocery store, I'll have to fill up my Toyota 4Runner. So I'll have less money to buy groceries, but I'll expend less calories walking or driving to the grocery store, but buying less overall food. What will the difference in net surplus be if I walk to and from the grocery store twice back to my car, only taking what I can obviously carry? Or if I drive, pay money for gas, get there, buy less food, but get to drive back and don't have to walk there and back.
Yeah, what's the net deficit? Is it calories or money?
Right, yeah. Where, like, basically, like, I had to just do the math, like, okay, which one of these leaves me bigger tomorrow, right? Like, is it walking to and from the airport to the grocery store?
What's the cheapest way to get fucking huge?
Yeah, so, and so that to me is like, that's like the bottom line for me is like that. So when I had the opportunity to travel, it wasn't a luxury. So I was 280 pounds, fucking juiced out of my fucking mind, sitting in a middle seat. I did 28,000 miles in the air in 18 days because I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't, like, and I think people give themselves a safety net where I was like, all right, I left in 2017. I don't know where that car is. So it's probably towed now. It's in a fucking junkyard in San Francisco. I mailed what little possessions I had left, like my diploma I mailed to my parents. I had 3 months worth of seminars back to back. That's what I was doing for 6 months before that. I'd live in my car. And then I would basically trade weekend seminars for flights and hotels and food. So I didn't have to do this calorie math in the weeks between. And then I was able to arrange, I was like, well, if I'm doing 2 weekends a month, I could probably get that up to 3 or 4. And then, so that was kind of my goal, was putting out enough content in the time I was in my office to spark enough interest. And then I had 3 months of seminars planned on the road. So I went from California, just left everything. I was married, I had a dog, all that shit gone, done. And so I went from California to New York. I did an event in New York. I somehow had a connection in Lebanon. So I went from New York to Heathrow to Beirut and spent a week in Beirut. And then I had a competition and a seminar in Miami. And then I ended up in Chicago, and then I ended up in Australia for a month. And then as I was on the road, like at the end of the day, I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do when this last seminar is up. But after my first week on the road, my phone rings. It's like, hey, I would love to do, it was actually John Meadows, rest in peace. John Meadows had called me. I was like, this is insane. Like, John Meadows has my phone number and he wants me to come to Ohio and do YouTube stuff with him. Like, what the fuck is my life? So I was like, hey man, like this is wild, but I can't make it until after this 3-month thing. He's like, yeah, when you get back from LA, just whenever you can after that. So I was like, sick. Another week on the road. That's a win. And then, so I was like, all right, now I've extended my road trip an extra week. And then the next weekend went by and then I had 2 calls. And then that was 2 more weeks. I did that for 3.5 years.
So you just started stacking the chips in your favor so you didn't have to go back home and count calories and cash.
No, it was leverage.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, how could I leverage the next thing? Like, John Meadows, what does that do? Well, it puts you deeper in the fitness industry. When I went to Lebanon, it was, I was speaking with the rugby team. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, I was a strength coach here, the leverage, right? So for me, it was like, I so strongly advise people to understand the impact of their external environment on the internal demand, right? So, and it's so easy to manipulate. Just go to the airport, get on a fucking plane. Now there are other ways to do it, and you can change the internal environment with your, some people are of strong enough mind to be able to control those thoughts and behaviors. Now I'm at a point now where I can do that, and traveling I think will bring you that very aggressively, especially when you don't have a choice. But to me, like, if you want to talk inflection points, like that's it for me. Like it's, when we take a 13-hour flight from LA to Auckland, 2-hour layover, and then a 4-hour, 3-hour 15 flight to Melbourne. Do you know how unproductive people are in 13 hours? It's so crazy to me that people will so I'm an advocate for throwing out all TVs. Like if you have a dream and a Netflix account, you have a Netflix account. You don't have a dream, right? Like, because to me, it's just like, it's like people will look, I usually post my travel stats at the end of the year. I do like a little Spotify wrap for all the places I've been. And, I traveled so much last year that I was bleeding out of my ears on planes because I had perforated my eardrums from being unable to equalize pressure so often. And it's like, dude, if you fucking get up my ass about, oh man, like, I don't know how you survive those flights. Really? Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones. You watch the whole thing in Game of Thrones? Great. Never seen a single episode. And you know what? That's 5 laps around the globe. There you go. What you're going to gain from just changing your external environment, like whether it's not even the direct correlation of like just the rooms I've been in, the people I've been in face-to-face contact. Like, oh wow, like this guy's actually about it. Like this person is nuts. But he's nuts for the thing that I want him to be nuts about. He's nuts about the core product of why I'm paying him money, whether it's the education side, whether it's the training side, whether it's the treatment side. Like, if I'm an athlete on contract, I'm up at 5 a.m. to train. And they're like, hold on, what? Yeah. And I was like, yeah, dude, like that's why you fucking hired me. Cause like, I'm that guy. Yeah. And for me, it's just like, prove, don't even do it to prove it to other people. Like do it to prove it to yourself. Cause I think a lot of people are in this industry by default. Like I look at personal training sometimes the same way I look at stripping. It's like some people just do it to get through college. Yeah. And it's like, hey man, that's totally cool. But, I think a change in environment will really hold your feet to the fire and see what you're all about. So for me, inflection point to kind of, to do this circuitous thing again is like, if you're unable to, and look, man, I was like, I don't know, 26, 27, when I didn't know my ear hole from my asshole. I didn't know what side of the bed to fucking piss on. I was just a stupid little kid. And I'm probably hopefully still that in the eyes of me in 5 years, 6 years from now.
That's how you're doing it.
Yeah, but it's like, if you're not, some spiritual, in-tuned, self-help guru, and you feel like you're not in a place you want to be, it's like, okay, put yourself in another place then.
And the answer to it is go do the fucking thing. Yeah. Like, man, the amount of conversations, funny you say that. I have that conversation with like mentoring clients, like, man, you're always at work. Like you fucking reply back at 3 a.m. It's like, yeah, because I'm fucking working. Like I'm the person that's mentoring you in the business because I fucking work. And like, it blows people's mind. But then there's the same people that say you should work less. Like, well, no, because you wouldn't be my client if I did. Yeah. Like you wouldn't be working, you wouldn't be paying me to help you grow your business if I worked less, because guess what I'd be doing? I'm inherently a naturally lazy person. It's like if I wasn't passionate and driven about the work, I would fucking watch Netflix.
Yeah.
Like as a preference, I choose work. Like, but if work wasn't there, yeah, I'd be addicted to being a lazy fuck. And it's like, well, I need to replace that. And if I continue to go if I went the other way, would we be having this conversation? Would we be having this conversation? Fuck no.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that recalibrates people's expectations of themselves, because if your answer isn't wholeheartedly like, yeah, I'd be at work. Like I love sending, I think you talked about 3 a.m. I love sending 3 a.m. emails. 3 a.m. Christmas morning, boom, everyone's getting hit with it. It's like, cause why? Cause I don't, and it's not that I don't care. I just care about, and this is the thing, like I talk about spite and I talk about revenge and I talk about anger and I talk about, competition. I talk about all these like really negative fear is like these really negative drivers, but all of it comes down to the fact that I really just love the thing.
Yeah, but also burn what you got.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And just getting rid of that like dead wood, it leaves you in a position like I'm a big Mike Tyson fan, and look, I was able to meet him last year. It was the fucking coolest thing ever. We ate the weed edibles shaped like Evander Holyfield's ear, like fucking all time favorite moment. But what I loved about Tyson, one of his fights, he came out in the hotel towel. Right, like, and you watch Triple G, you watch Canelo, you watch maybe some of the old school guys, Mayweather. They come up with big fucking sombreros, almost bullshit. A hotel towel, like that's a reduced essence. I came here for one thing. I came here to rip the heart out of his chest. It's like that is what I want, right? Like I would just, and because it's really about being a steward or a shepherd for the essence of what we all do, right? Like I want that to live on. And if people bang on about like, oh, this guy puts out bad information, or this guy does this, or this guy's like, he doesn't have any credentials, or, did you see that so-and-so was on Rogan, blah, blah, blah. It's like, look, yeah, but what are you going to do about it? Right? Like that's sort of the thing. It's like the put up or shut up. It's like, you're either going to step up or you're going to, so it's like, for me, it's like, this is how I can step up. Right? Like I can't openly fight people in the fitness industry, although I've come close a few times, but it's like, well, how do you win? It's like you win by just doing more than the other. It's attrition, right? And then, do I get a sick sense of like satisfaction when, a company that I think is ill-intentioned, or a coach or mentor or something that I think is ill-intentioned or does bad business, or has, values that don't align with me, or maybe is disrespectful to their clientele or something like that. When they fail and we're still standing and we have a team that's been with us for 8 years, do I have like a sick sense of satisfaction? Absolutely.
Fuck yeah.
Oh my God.
I live for that shit.
I live for it, but because of what it is I really like, it's, to me, it's sanctimonious. Like it's borderline religious. It's like, this is a thing that we're lucky enough to be in a position to protect and nurture and to grow. And, I like the imagery of a shepherd, and it's so fitting for our fucking industry, because it's always like, wolves, sheep. It's like there is a few set people who protect those that might not know better from the people who know better and are trying to, prey on them. And it's like, historically, we think shepherds, we think fucking old people in Wales walking sheep across the road or some shit. But historically, shepherds they're bad dudes. They had to kill lions and fucking tigers and shit. Like they had to protect their flock. And to me, as an act of service, like if I'm in a position to have that, I don't even want to say responsibility, but have the ability to look at this thing as something that's worth protecting. And it sounds, I'm sure this sounds insane to people. Like we're talking about like working out, like reps and sets. But to me, I literally look at it as like our industry is, the service industry of fitness, if you will, as a byproduct, or as an entity like this that's worth protecting, that's worth pushing forward, that's worth getting across the road.
And it's also worth going all in on too. Like talk about authenticity and like doing it. If you're going to do it properly and do it wholeheartedly. And I think it's also, for me at least, it's a challenging of the status quo. It's I guess the sense of pride that I have, that I go, look, no one else will do this, or very few. And we live in a world now, especially in fitness, probably even in corporate now, that like balance gets pushed, and it's like, well, I'm not balanced and you won't beat me for that reason. Like balance will be the death of the business in my eyes, because if I was to be balanced, that means less.
There's no such thing as discipline and moderation.
Yeah. It's synergy.
Yeah.
You find that point of like codependency. They work, like the business works in spite of your effort as well. Like it's there regardless. It's synergistic. It grows, and it's working together with your lifestyle, not against. Balance is therefore it's an opposing force. If you're trying to be balanced, you're putting something against you.
Yeah. By definition, like if you're trying to balance a teeter-totter, you put like another 120 kilo bloke on the other side of it, but that fat cunt, so fucking, he's working to keep you on the ground.
Yeah, and it's like net zero.
Yeah. It's, and you know, at the end of the day, it's like, look, like, what do people want? Like if you want to be happy, then don't get into this business. Like, don't get into the business of owning a business.
I agree.
Right. But if you want to know the difference between happiness and fulfillment, then this might be the place for you. And look, and it's so hard to say that and then take a step back and be like, and that's okay.
Yes.
Right. Like, you know, and I'm sure you're often posed the question of like, if you could give yourself advice, like the 5-year ago version of yourself, and it's like,
do the same thing.
Nothing. Yeah. I wouldn't say shit. Right. Because every fucking rake I stepped on, smashed, every wall I jumped into is like, yeah, that's something I needed to learn. And I think trying to nerf people away from, you know, the walls that they need to run into just leads them in that codependent state. But it's like, look, I think being able to honestly assess yourself, or putting yourself in a position to honestly assess yourself, is where you're going to find the answer. Like, do you want to answer emails at 3:30 in the morning? Right? Do you want to be, and look, people, you know, I'm up early, as are you. we're probably in bed at the same time for the same amount of time on the other side of the world. And like, I don't set an alarm.
Likewise.
That's what gets people. Like, I'm not on some like David Goggins bullshit. I'm just up. Like, I wake up and it's like, so Phil, we were talking today, and he's like he's very not behavioral, but he's like Jane Goodall. Mm-hmm. He just sits back and watches them. We're a bunch of chimp. He's very cerebral, I think would be a good word. And he asked us all the question, the coaches today in the morning. And like, mind you, every dude that in our business runs their own business, and it's extremely successful, Phil included. And he asked the question of, how long after you wake up do you start working? And I was like, well, that depends on how far my laptop is away from my bed. And that was my answer. And you know, the other coaches, frankly, probably because they have better systems, or they're smarter, or they're less erratic. But for me, it was like, how far is my laptop from my bed? That, whatever that distance is the length it takes for me to start working. And it's not, I think the industry is pendulum swung to be too process oriented. And don't get me wrong, I understand the necessity of processes from like a business development standpoint, streamlining things.
I think boots on the ground, process sometimes slows people down.
But what happened to the objective? Right. Yeah. So this is like, for me, like when I wake up early, you know, I'll grab coffee, I'll do whatever, and I'll throw a thing up in the morning. And it's kind of become like a thing. But it's anxiety that wakes me up. Like, let's not get it twisted, right? It's anxiety or excitement, one of the two.
Yeah.
I can't tell the
You're
difference.
driven forward or you're running away. Like,
those are the two tenets of motivation. Yeah. So it's motivation that gets me up, and whether it's, you know, the cat or the cheese, I'm the rat just running the fuck along, right?
You're going to run as hard as you fucking can too.
But for me, I don't need to talk about hustle and grind. And I don't think there's a need to it, because if we look at outcome orientation, I'll just look at my CV. It's like, you can't do this in 9 to 5, right? Like, you just can't. There's not enough time in my life at 33 years old to have been to the places I've been. And I hate the tone of this, but I think it's useful for people who might be looking, again, too close to the problem. Yeah. It's like, oh, like, I've got to build processes and systems. It's like, no, like, you need to have outcomes.
Fuck, man, I fully agree. You've got like, business and life in general doesn't reward effort, it rewards outcome.
Yeah.
Every time. And
that's your value.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's so much of it, I think, comes down to proving it to yourself. Right. I think, like, look, there'll be times where, I have to prove stuff to my parents because they, you know, took every fucking red cent they saved and gave it to me instead of my sister. And, you know, my dad literally took me aside when we got the student loan. The money wasn't for the education. It was enough to put down as collateral, or we thought it was enough. My dad pulled me aside one day, and when I got the approval for the student loan to go to grad school in California, and he's like, I got good news and bad news. And my dad's a very jovial guy, like very just kind-hearted. And I was like, he's like, what do you want first? I was like, I've never had a conversation like this with my father before or since. And I was like, give me the good news, I guess. I don't know. And he's like, good news is we got your student loan. I was like, holy fuck, like, life-changing. Pulled over to the side of the road and was driving home from the gym. I was on Easy Row Expressway in Windsor, staying with my parents after my last semester of undergrad. And I was like, okay, bad news. He goes, we didn't have enough money. So we had to put the house up as collateral. If you fuck this up, me and your mother, my dad's never sworn, but again, before or since, my dad goes, if you fuck this up, me and your mother are homeless. I was like, oh, jeez.
There's some gravity for you.
But it's, you know, game on.
Yeah.
High stakes. Yeah. Let's go. And I think, dude, the fucking bet on yourself, man. Right? Like, and that's been it ever since. Like, I remember the second you hung up the phone, I had to take a minute. I was like pretty emotional. And I turned on California Love by Tupac. Just because why not be the biggest cliche douchebag in the world? And I was like, okay, like that to me was like, you know, Annie up, man. Like, and I think there's the fear comes from a lack of confidence, right? And I knew even at the time, like you talked earlier about like, you know, clients looking to move on to the next thing where they haven't tapped out, or you know, clients of yours, mentor clients of yours that want to move on to the next thing but haven't tapped out the thing they're currently doing. I was famous in my hometown. Right. I was, you know, I walked through a gym, and even now going home, and I can say this unequivocally, like the gym I trained at, I was the guy you went to if you had a problem. Me and my training partner, Luke Bernatchez, were known to be like the training guys in Windsor, Ontario. Like that group, if you trained in that gym and you're like, oh, I want to get bigger, you'd come and ask us.
Yep.
And we would help. And a decade has gone by, and I'll go home to visit my family, and I'll train at the gym, and people will come up to me and be like, hey man, like you don't remember me, but like you helped me with my deadlift when you were like 18. And I was like, are you okay? Like, you know, like, was I an idiot? I was like, no, man, it's been great. Like, it was so cool to see that. And that's, I mean, you know, we talked earlier about things that I would impart on people and like leverage and things like that. It's like, that's your greatest opportunity. Yeah. Right. I mean, I think we luckily enough grew up in a time without the inundation or integration of social media into fitness. Agreed. And that was where the connection building started. Right. Like, you know, I have people who I remember posting articles for a bodybuilder in my last year of practice, in my final year of grad school. I was treating a professional powerlifter, Dan Green, twice a week, like off the books, off the record. I would drive to the gym twice a week because leverage, right? The intersection of me being, you know, the strongest kid in my school and this guy loving lifting weights, but also having an injury, and me, that was an intersection that was a room I needed to be in. So I did that. I would drive out and I didn't charge him a dime. And after, I had an ability to practice out of his gym when I graduated. I also wrote for this guy, Craig Capurso, who he was on bodybuilding.com. He was sponsored by Cellucor. He was one of the first guys to compete in Classic Physique, the John Lindsay Classic Physique show in California. He was at that show. And I remember being in the same room with him. He was training at the gym I was at, and I recognized him. And I was like, fuck, like opportunity, intersection, right? I love lifting weights, but I also know this thing that he doesn't. I can provide him value. I wanted the bench he was on. So I walked up to him and hand to God, I was like, that was your last set, right? And he laughed. He was, who the fuck do you think you are? I was like, let me work in with you and I'll tell you. And then for my last year of school, I would write an article. So it was called fireandicefitness.com. It was Craig Capurso's like personal brand. I would write an article every week and post on the back end of his WordPress site, while in between going to Dan Green's gym and treating him twice a week at his gym, while finishing, you know, my final year of grad school, while starting work at Apple, while, you know, being engaged and then married. And it was leverage. It was like, I'll tell this story. And I think people underestimate, you know, we talk about luck and creating your own luck, but understanding the intersections of leverage, and like a little bit about social engineering. So my ex-wife is Australian. She's from the South Coast, Batemans Bay area. One of the freakiest athletes on the planet. There are books written about her. I mean, she'll never listen to this, but you know, she's fucking unbelievable athlete. We met at the gym. And there was an intersection, and you know, we discussed this as we were together for 7 years, the intersection of, you know, the common interest of weight training at 6 a.m. in the morning, because she was preparing for Sochi Olympics when we met, and also chiropractic. That was something interesting. I wasn't just a guy there at 6 a.m. like, oh, I saw you at school too. When we were dating, she got a job at Apple. So I told you earlier that I worked at Apple. And this is, I mean, whether it's awareness, whether it's, I don't know if this is going to be something that be taught, but I think I would challenge people to take a look about the opportunities that are in front of them, whether in front of them is a physical thing or whether in front is a chronological thing. Yep. Hand to God. Now, I used to keep it real tight. bald fade, real hood. Like I fucking grew up like a little scrappy ghetto kid. Like, and I brought that to grad school. And you know what? I doubled down on that authenticity there. I was not coming to California kid, right? Like I got my first tattoo after my first semester of school in the States, and it's a maple leaf.
Yeah.
Because people were like, oh, like you're Canadian, or you're American, right? Because why wouldn't I? I'm a fucking white guy in California. Why wouldn't I be from California? I was like, nah, bitch. Like I'm Canadian. So like it forced me, like I would wear fucking cargo, like shorts. I've never worn shorts above my knee. Well, I don't know what Aussie bullshit you guys are on with your 4-inch inseam, but
I'm on the same page as you.
Basketball shorts, keep it a buck,
Same.
right? So high tops, basketball shorts, cargo shorts, and I was kind of like the scrappy ghetto kid in the school. And I mean, we got along great. Like we got along famously. Like the friends I have there, I'm still friends with today. But at the same time, there was like an authenticity factor, but there was also an understanding of the potential limitations. And I understand that now, right? Like I would walk in interviews and I'm heavily tattooed. Like I got tattoos on my fucking skull. I got tattoos all over my hands. Like I'm as covered as I'd like to be more covered, but and you understand this. So kind of back to the story. My wife was working at Apple. She was older than me. She'd already graduated. We had another friend that was working there. Her name was Sil. Very, very smart. And she, unbeknownst to the staffing operator at Apple, was applying for a PhD program at the university. Sil's brilliant. She's going to get it. But she didn't want to like show her hand too early. So she told my wife this. And I was like, Sil's going to get that PhD job. They're going to be high and dry. Sil's going to have to leave on a moment's notice. She's going to get that acceptance letter, and she's going to have to be on the plane the next day. Now, knowing a little bit about Apple's corporate culture, especially in the wellness center, right? If you want to be a fucking CFO of that company covering tattoos, you can do what the fuck you want if you have the merit for it. But frankly, the people cracking your neck, like they want a certain look. So I started growing my hair out the next day. So because it's 6 months online, I'm like, okay, I can get some fucking, like, I still think my hair is stupid. Like in my head, I'll show you my driver's license after this, like skin.
Yeah.
Like, just like, it's not, especially now with the tattoos, I can't go back. But I started going out the next day deliberately. And, you know, when we would go to these staff functions with these staffing managers, and it was like a corporate Apple thing, leading up to me having that information, I would cargo shorts, fucking, retro 9s, like the whole 9 yards. This is this fucking scrappy kid. And they're like, and, I can talk. I fucking know the subject matter. But it's like, again, you're in the people business. So every social outing that we out after that, I bought corduroys. Didn't even know what corduroys were, but I bought a pair and I had them. Loafers, got them. I wear glasses usually. I mean, I wear contacts usually, but I wear glasses. I need them bad. I have a pair of like nerdy glasses that I wear in the morning if I don't have to train or whatever. Every social outing, glasses.
Sitting, you have to be
sitting next to the boss. So I did that for 6 months, and then sure as shit, that happened. Mm-hmm. She got the PhD thing, and then they were left high and dry. I was sitting there with a degree, just fresh out of school, and I had planted the seed for 6 months. And they're like, wow, like, hey, we're in a pinch. Like, I know, like, you just kind of opened your own thing. Would you be interested in a job at Apple? Like, yeah, like, are you joking me? Like, what a leverage card, right?
Yeah.
So I think some people like understand like what opportunities are in front of you, whether physically or chronologically, like through time or in space, and understand your leverage. And again, I want to lose the white belt mentality. People need you to provide solutions for them. They don't need you sitting there looking for more questions. Right. And it's something that, and again, I'm in the education space, and I know this is antithetical to my business model, but I would rather a world where people step out of their own fear of making a mistake. And that's what it comes down to. Because if you do make a mistake, you're going to become more competent as a byproduct of it, and only more confident as a byproduct of that. Right. So, putting yourself in situations where you're likely to fail to the degree that you can tolerate without quitting the field that you're in, do that thing. Right. Because I think too many people hide behind this high horse of, they call it a forever student. They call it a white belt mentality, and I call them a coward. It's true. In my mind, it's true. They sit there and these kids will take every course under the sun, and like ours is a way out. Here is a system. You write the fucking thing now. Right. Here's a way, like we with a level 3 the other day, like, I'm in this guy's shoulder. Like, yeah, dude, number 1 linebacker in the draft. Don't fuck that up. Got a labrum issue. What are you going to do? Well, like, let's think. What do you know? What's a systematic way we approach shoulders? Right.
What can you stand behind?
What chip can you put on the board? Yeah. And it's like, do you have the balls to fuck up? do you have the, and so it's really, it's frustrating for me to watch people get in their own way. But more importantly, get in their own way under the false veil of humility and progress. It's like perfection is the enemy of progress. It's like one of my favorite quotes. And it's just people, and it's like, it's so fucking shitty for me to have to use the word courage. It's like, you're not storming the beach on Normandy in 44. You know what I mean? You're fucking training someone in a gym. Don't fucking sign up for the next thing and push the can down the road of your own accountability to yourself. It's infuriating, because the thing is, and it's most infuriating in the cases where people are hyper confident or hyper competent.
Yes.
But they cannot exchange that because they can't get over the crippling fear they've instilled in themselves, and the one day they might get something wrong. It's like, look, let me tell you wholeheartedly, from someone who's fucked up every day of his life for 33 years, you're going to get it wrong. And you know what? Doesn't fucking matter.
And it's okay.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And just at the end of, like, one of my favorite statistics, I learned this from being on the road with Nick Kyrgios, an Australian audience would probably know who he is, or tennis audience would know who he is. And we were sitting back one day, and Novak's walked into his such an insane story. Like, we're sitting back in the Wimbledon change room, and Novak Djokovic walks in. And he's like, he dabs him up, and they're all tight. And his manager, my buddy Dan Horson, he comes over and he's like, because you know what his win percentage is over his career? I was like, I don't know, man. Guy's won fucking every Grand Slam like a bajillion times. And he's like, his point win percentage, so the number of points he wins next to his opponent, is like 51%. And I was like, holy shit. Here you have, over time, 20 years, he's the most winningest Australian Open champion. He's probably the most winning Wimbledon champion. He's, I don't know, 25, 30 plus Grand Slams. He'll do the fucking complete tour. He'll do the French Open, US Open, Aussie Open, and Wimbledon, and he'll win all of them.
And his legacy is he's the person that wins.
He's the person that wins.
Oh, 1%.
And that's what optimal is. Optimal's not 100%. Optimal's 51%. And optimal's having the balls to come back and play another point. And it's just, like he doesn't lose a match or lose a point or lose a game. He lost to Carlos Alcaraz in the French Open this year. And it was just like, then he came back and, he'll win Aussie running away. It's like, look, you're going to make a mistake, but you can still be the greatest of all time. Like, if he has put together that career off 51%, it's the house, right? It's gambling. It's like, you're the house. House always wins. If anyone knows odds about casinos, 51, your best odds is walking to a casino and putting all your money on one hand of blackjack. That's the best odds, 51%. You're at 49, but the house is at 51. That's your best odds in the casino. And it's just like, it's so frustrating. And it's difficult to impart from my position, because, we are set to monetarily gain from people's dependence. Now it's almost like capped. It's like, no. And we have business structures in place long-term for, the continuation of learning through continuing education units, and being a portal of entry provider, and having our own personal training certificate that's nationally and internationally accredited. So, like, look, it's my job to build a business that allows you to have the freedom and confidence to go out and not need to be educated, but rather be experienced. And that's what the level 3 is. Level 3 is like, re-release you into the wild. Yeah. Go out there and write your own shit.
Yeah, you have permission to fail now.
Yeah. And it's permission, such an interesting word, because I feel like that's what it takes.
That's what people feel like they need.
Yeah.
Permission to fail. Like, they have a right to fail by starting. The simple fact that you sign on the dotted line that you are going to be a business owner, you now have the right to fail. Yeah. You will fail, but they still feel like they need permission. Someone to say it will be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I think if there's a stamp that we're trying to put on people, it's that it will be okay. Like, 'cause it has to be, because,
otherwise you wouldn't be here where you are. Like, if it's not okay, bro, like, you guys have failed so many times. I've failed so many times.
Oh my God.
We're here.
Yeah. Yeah. I just don't, I never asked anyone for permission. You?
No.
Why? No, because this I think is fundamental, and I'm struggle with this personally, because, we I
can put this very simply, because the subjective experience of what failure is changes every fucking time. So I might find failure in just not getting back to a message fast enough, and that might feel the exact same. It's like an RPE 10 in the gym. It's a fucking 10 for me, 10 for you, 300 kilos different. Failure still feels hard. Like, my heart is my heart, so I'm going to just have to accept that failure is going to feel hard no matter when I do it, no matter how many times I do it. The scale just moves. So I just have to accept that if it's a moving scale, the more you do, the more you get.
I mean, I think how you start so broadly dictates how you finish, right? Like, so I've been threatened to get kicked out of every single school I ever went to, from primary school to high school to undergraduate school to grad school. There was legal action taken against me by my school in grad school. Because
Do I dare?
No. It was just, you know what? I whether it's a confidence thing, right? Like I at that point in my life at 23, 24 years old, I knew for a fact I did more to understand the human body through my own trials and tribulations, my reading, curricular and extracurricular, that age is no sign of experience, youth is no sign of innovation. I was 25, but I far exceeded the experience of, my superiors twice my age in my school. And I was not to sit back and be made someone's bitch. But I wasn't going to sit there and let someone to tell me. So when Dan Green came in, they're like, oh, you should do this, this, and this. I was like, you do understand this man deadlifts 900 pounds, and what you're telling me to do, he's going to do. No, like you have to do a bird dog. I'm like, that's the stupidest thing in the world. Well, he's got this. And I'm like, his erectors are the size of my forearms, ma'am, which would make them about the size of your quads or torso. So like, I'm not going to sit here and do this. I brought this patient in. He's my patient. He's like, well, you're under my, I was like, no, I don't care. I don't care. And then, like, getting back to the business and like one of our, I mean, I don't want to say, again, we don't have any mission statements. We don't have anything, but it's like, it's just an just uncompromising approach in your confidence and your ability to solve problems. And that's been everything from fucking whether I was trying to get kicked out of kindergarten or they're trying to kick me out of grade school or undergrad or grad school. It was like, it stems from knowing you've put in the work, right? Drillers make killers. You resort to your training, right? Like whether anyone has anyone who fights professionally or recreationally or is in the military, like, the knee-jerk reaction has to be trained into you. And like, we call it instinct if you want, but instinct is just awareness over time. Right. So for me, it's just like, what is the difference between someone who's, I don't want to say born like that. Like, I've always been defiant. And I think defiance is a part of, I think, every business owner, not that I am one, but every business owner, I think, has a level of defiance. And I'm trying to, through building competence in the core subject matter, instill a confidence for people to be defiant, for people to be like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
And I will prove you.
Yeah. And so, but I always am inquisitive of people who just start off with a baseline defiance. What is the difference between those who need to be taught that? Can it be taught versus, people who are just like, no, like right out of the gate, like unequivocally, no.
It can be taught.
I hope so. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think just, having a strong shield and a sharp spear is like always the best way to go in. Right. And I think, they not to belabor a point or beat a dead horse, but like the competence thing is going to be what sharpens the spear and what reinforces the shield. It's like, if you are good at what you do, it should not matter. Like, I remember getting my first tattoo on my hand. Mike Suarez, this guy, tattooed on his fucking eyelids, looks at me and goes, you sure you want it on your hand? I'm like, put it on my fucking hand, dog. Like, yeah. And a lot of that was, and to this day, a lot of it, I mean, the places I have tattoos, the tattoos I have are really more like, I want to sit in a room with someone and give them every reason for them to not want to work with me. But then by the merit of my being in that room and what I say in that room, they do not have a choice.
Yeah. That's funny. I said this to my mum of all people. She still doesn't accept the tattoo life.
Bless. You know what? We'll start a WhatsApp group between our moms.
Oh, she'd be the queen. Trust me. She'd lead the charge. But I had a chat to her. I was like, yeah, look, over the next couple of years, I'm going to be that guy that talks business that's got throat tattoos. And people are going to be weirded out when they walk into a room. And they're going to take data-driven advice from this guy with tattoos on his throat and tattoos on his neck, and they're going to have no choice but to listen. And Mum's just like, no, don't do that. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, like, that's funny. The throat's always the one with the mom say. My mom's the same. She's like, my dad says, don't get into any freak places. I was like, what's a freak? He's like, your throat. Don't tattoo your throat. But it's, you know what? It's a constant external environment, right? Like, you talk about changing your environment. There's something to be said about putting yourself behind the eight ball, right? There's something to be said about, like, that is the physical and maybe it's people are coming around, but if there's a world where that aesthetic is less frowned upon, it's the higher you go up the social economic ladder, there are less people that look like us.
Oh yeah.
But that to me is just it's a signal of your ability to adapt in environments that you're deliberately putting yourself in. right? Like I love, whether not necessarily like I love tattoos. Like I like the process of them. I like the art. I think is super interesting. But I do like the subversion of expectations, right? And I think whenever you can subvert anyone's expectations, whether that's like good or bad, like whether people think you're really good and then you turn out to be bad, it at least makes you interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Like the subversion of expectations, like your ability to talk at the level that you talk about the subject matter that you talk about, while looking the way, you know, we both look like this is welcome to the Prison Podcast with your co-hosts Rhys and Jordan. And it's like, but I think it teaches people like about dimensionality. It teaches people about, you know, intersectionality has taken somewhat of a bad rap as a term in the last 5 or 6 years. But I think it's, what is the intersection of the things you love to do? Because great problem solvers are great lateral thinkers, right? And you know, Coach James McIntosh and I, we both have the quote, "How you do one thing is how you do everything," tattooed on our ribs, right, real close to the heart. Because that's like, I mean, we don't talk about shared values. It's like literally have fucking ink, blood, brother fucking tattoos on our ribs. But I will, for the things, whether it's guitar, whether it's travel, whether it's, you know, when I talk about travel, people know that I'm serious about everything I do. Mm-hmm. Like, I know the planes I'm on. I know the engines. I know where they come from. I know the range of most, you know, commercial airliners. I know what rental car companies are closest to the garage in the majority of airports around the world, so I can get through an airport quicker. Right? Like, because why? Because I know the innervation of muscles in the body. I know it's detail, and sometimes it's detail for the sake of proving that you give a shit. Yeah. Right? Like there are things I know about anatomy and biomechanics that when it comes to the gym floor, I'm better off in some cases, given the rooms that I train and the athletes I train, I'm better off knowing Lil Baby lyrics than knowing, you know, innervation, origin, insertion, muscle action, all of this stuff. But sometimes it's not about that. Sometimes it's about reinforcing your hand. So Greg, I grew up in like a bit of a rough neighborhood, and this is maybe a little anecdote as to how rough. There was a gun seizure 3 minutes from my parents' house. And it was very metaphorical. I'll talk about it this weekend. And I talk about the importance of delivery in your confident approach to solving problems for people, and relaying them the assurance that you can solve the problem. Most people aren't going to know the technical. They won't know. If they knew the technical aspects of the things that we do and the problems that we solve, we wouldn't be hired to solve the problems. So how is it that you can relay with confidence that can be, you know, transmitted or translated into something that they understand? And it's all about delivery. So this gun seizure, super, and mind you, I live in Canada, which has, you know, probably not as strict to gun laws as Australia, but, you know, next to our neighbors from the south, pretty strict gun laws. There was found in the seizure was a .22, which any of you are familiar with firearms, a small gauge firearm, kind of a keep a guy out of your house type handgun. The next was a Benelli pump action 12 gauge double barrel shotgun, which is like, hunting purposes, you know, people or otherwise, depending on what you're hunting. But that's a fuck off weapon, man. Yeah. Like that is, you know, matte black pump action. You're basically Terminator. And then now this is, I can't make this shit up. And like, shout out Windsor, Ontario. The third weapon that was seized was an M72 single shot rocket launcher. Yes, because like, you know, one is like you want to shoot your neighbor, one is you want to shoot your neighbor's cat, and one is when you blow up your neighbor's house. But what I loved about that, and I challenge coaches as we teach things, whether it's like face to camera stories that disappear in 24 hours, like getting over your fear of delivery of the information that you know by graded exposure at whatever level you're most uncomfortable with, but still able to be comfortable enough to do. And I challenge, like, look, if you want to write a post. You want to fucking do it face to camera, but like practice your delivery. And what I love about, you know, those three weapons is that I challenge them to practice their delivery in a 22 level, a 12 gauge level, and a single shot rocket launcher level. So like whether I'm having a conversation, I mean, this morning I had a conversation with the senior, okay, I can't name the name, or I probably can't even name the position. Someone very high up in one of the largest sporting organizations in America. And we're talking about a potential position with the team and what that might look like. That's your rocket launcher. right?
So you got one shot.
You got one shot, and you better fucking blow it up, right? So, you know, you were dealing with someone how do you solve that guy's problem, right? What are the words he wants to hear, right? Guess what? The second I knew this call was coming, my first thing was not to go review my systems or my processes or even my resume and my CV. You know what the first thing I did was? I found the guy on LinkedIn. Figured out where he went to school, figured out where he's from, figured out what he did. I figured out the name of his dog, right? Like, play the man. We're always in the people business. And look, I have a M72 single shot rocket launcher delivery because I've been in rooms to have to deliver that. Yeah. But, you know, we had a kid come in last minute, you know, a high level lacrosse player, plays in, you know, big major school in the States, last minute appointment. I was about to leave. I stayed back, and, you know, his mom and dad were there. I'm not busting out the rocket launcher, right? I need, you know, they're worried about their son, you know, highly touted, families, you know, very athletic, dad's a decorated football player. It's like, okay, I need precision with minimal collateral. I don't want to re-drywall, right? And I don't want to blow this thing up for him. So it's like, you know, I need a soft landing here, right? So that's a 22, right? And look, I have the same conversation I had with the director of so-and-so whatever team, and the loving parents of this 20-year-old kid with an Achilles tendon rupture. There was the same ethos and message in both, but I was able to just go into the arsenal and deliver it very differently. And then sometimes there's a middle, you know, if I'm in a fucking cocktail party and some naturopath or some, you know, maybe even like an orthopedic surgeon, someone's like, oh yeah, like he does it. And some fucking prick condescending guy comes over like, oh, like, well, like, you know, you're a personal trainer. It's like, yeah, man, like, you want, sure, yeah. And I got one in the chamber for him, and he goes, well, you know, like, we had a labrum case the other day. I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Was it a slap tear? Was it a Bankart lesion? Did you do anchors? Did you do a tenodesis? I was like, I just blew that guy's head off and took out the fucking cocktail server behind him, right? Because it's like, and look, you know, Ready Player One, choose your weapon, but have a fucking arsenal, right? And like, it's not enough just to have sound bites, right? It's understanding your audience, no different than like, and here's the thing, trainers are so inherently good at this with their clients, right? Yeah. That's your superpower. You're able to go into a room and really establish a relationship quickly. But when it counts,
you need to know what weapon to play.
You need to know what weapon to play, but you need to have them all strapped and ready to go. Yeah. Right. And so it's like, I challenge people to like practice their delivery, understand, like bring it into your territory and win, right? Like know how to shape conversation to the point where you can be the smartest guy in the room. Because if you're in like, you know, in an interview process for a job that you want, and you're trying to leverage a position, you know what they're looking for? The smartest guy in the fucking room, right? They're not looking for like, well, you know, I'm a white belt. I'm
here to learn.
I'm here to learn. It's like, okay, like go to school to learn. Yeah. This is the fucking major leagues. We want the smartest guy in the room, right? And you need to figure out like, and again, they're probably of professions, and I look at what we do as a profession, which I think is, let's start there, and let's maybe take yourself seriously as a professional. Hard to, you know, guy wearing the fucking baseball jersey and the hand tattoos, but like take yourself seriously. If you don't have confidence enough to do what you do, you shouldn't be in the position to do it, right? Like you're a liability, you're not an asset. So I would challenge people to lose that, work on the delivery, work on the competence that drives the confidence so that you can walk into a room and be like, yeah. Cause you know, you're going to lose your points of leverage by showing your hand, by showing your fear that you're not confident in your abilities to solve problems for people.
And I think that sums up business in itself, knowing what hand to play, what weapon to use, and, you know, better yet, having weapons ready. So, because some weapon is better than no fucking weapon at the end of the day.
Well, I think I love the card analogy because it's like, you know, we talk about just the aesthetic and the direct, maybe contraindication to trust that we like the way we look might bring to the table. But it's like, I want to be so good at the game that a 7-2 offsuit will leave me taking the pot. Right? Like that's the proof of concept I want. Like I don't want an upper hand. Like I'll show you my hand. And we'll still win.
Yeah, undeniable.
Yeah.
You fucking rock it.
Yeah.
Man, what's some final words, some practical applications, some, I guess, actionables for people, coaches, small business owners, if they want to grow their business? What would your suggestion be?
Honestly, travel. Perspective, like have a worldview. Yeah. Like it's you know what? It's it's so intangible, but if you just spend enough time in life paying attention, you got to realize that like paradoxes are so commonplace that there should be as universal as gravity. Like if your advice, and look, you know, I'm sure each person at a granular level has some business system or like, oh wow, use this application and it fucking, you know, Zapier will automatically do that, free up 5 hours of your week or whatever the fuck. But like if you've been paying attention to the events in your life and you start to see what moves the needle, it's usually not as direct as you might think, right? So for me, and I'm obviously biased, but I've seen it so consistently lend clarity and perspective to people, right? And I think there's no faster way to figure out what you want than to just get on a plane and go, right? Like the comfort kills complacency thing. It's like, okay, you know, it's very hard. Like gratitude is not an app that you post on the fucking Instagram story in the morning. Like, you know, gratitude for me is not fucking up the situation you're in. But some people they don't have enough feedback to really understand where they are. Like people consciously are like blind. Like think of a bat. Bat knows where knows where it is by like sending out a signal, and the reverberations are what tell it its relative location, everything in space. You've been training in the same gym and you go train in the same thing. And it's just like, especially with the intersection of bodybuilding and fitness business, where you have this just mind-numbingly soul-numbing pursuit of chicken and rice and whatever, broccoli and tilapia or whatever the fuck. Just go. Just fucking go to the airport. Do it. I've been traveling on the road for like 2.5 weeks, and I'll be on the road for another, well, depending, I might have to fly back for whatever this fucking thing might be. But I went on an hour's notice. I had a flight booked, and then something came up. I was like, oh, fuck, gotta go. Like, I had to buy a toothbrush. I'm like, oh, I forgot my fucking toothbrush. But like, I traveled so much a couple of years ago that I used to get overwhelmed with not knowing where light switches were. I'd get angry. Like I would get physically, it was such a destabilizing point in my life that like I had gone from having a place in California to 2.5 years later, like waking up and like, you know, middle of the night, I'm about to take a piss in the closet because this is the relative orientation of the toilet in the place I stayed the night before, but I'm in a different place now. Right. So it's just like, yeah, I can't escape it as like the straightest line. And like, if you don't go to fucking Bali, goddamn, it doesn't count. No, like go to the Middle East, right? Like go to Oman, go to Pakistan, go to like, oh, that's dangerous. Yeah, great.
Perspective.
Great. Well, you want to read a room? And I got pulled over where the fuck was I? I was in Jordan. I was about, I don't know, 100 kilometers north of the Saudi Arabia border. And they have like pit stops, like checkpoints. And it's Toyota pickup trucks with 50 cal top mounted, I don't know, 50 cal, I'm not good with guns, but like top mounted turrets, belt fed machine guns on the top. And we got pulled over. And I was just traveling. And then like I had a driver and we got pulled over, and these the cops like weld us in. Just like, oh, this is odd. I'm sure their driver would have just pulled over. And, you know, I'm in the back seat, and the girl I was traveling with at the time, the two cops were like in Arabic, told the driver like, hey, tell her to get out of the car. And the driver turns around and speaks English and Arabic and goes, oh, they want her to get out of the car. So 0% chance. We're not getting out of this car. I'm going to get out of the car. As I'm hopping out of the back passenger seat of the car we were in, unbeknownst to me, so distracted by like the fucking cops TV show way of pulling us over, that I didn't realize that one of these pickup trucks had pulled off into the ditch. And as I opened the door in defiance of like the cops telling the girl I was with to get out of the car, I was like, fuck this, I'm in the middle of the desert and two guys are no chance. I looked down the barrel of a 50 cal top mounted with a guy with a finger on the trigger, and I was like, and it's just, and you know what, I got back from that trip, and you know, I keep a notebook with me. And on the flight back from Oman to, I think I was living in Dubai at the time, for some reason, you know, it's a problem that we had with like one of our softwares that we use on the back end of our website. And it's every single time I'm in a position where it's like, oh, fuck, like I don't have the currency in this and no one speaks the language and I don't know how I'm going to get food here or like whatever crazy. The amount of clarity, and I could not tell you the mechanism by which it happens, not that deep into neuroscience, but whatever genes get turned on in that position of stress that you will not get from, oh no, they don't have the cream of rice I usually eat. My digestion, like, oh my God, like fucking experience. But dude, I swear to God, every single aha moment, like the level three for us it's such a great intersection of, the partner that we work with provides value to him, it provides value to the coaches, it provides value to the athletes, and it obviously provides value to the company. Like, it's just such a win. And that was born of having a gun to my head in the middle of a desert going, well, this is it for me. This is where I die. Like, what a weird way to end. But I swear to God, on the plane, I go like, oh fuck, man. So yeah, I mean, it's super long-winded, circuitous way of just going like, get out there. Like, if you can't, and look, it doesn't have to be the kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It doesn't have to be the southern Jordanian desert, 200.
It doesn't have to be months on end either.
Right.
You go get perspective for 4 days, shit changes.
And it's just, so I think people, again, they look too close to the problem, right? They look at their business and they go, yeah, and don't get me wrong, right? Like, your world, certainly we could get people to their 10K month, but cleaning up some systems, maybe understanding a sales funnel or a product line or whatever. But it's like, you want to really make change to the person that runs the business. Do that. Get some perspective.
I agree, bro. This has been a pleasure. We could talk on this for a fucking long time.
Dude, yeah, it feels short, but I'm sure it was long.
Yeah, it's been fun. I appreciate you coming down. Obviously, we've got a big weekend ahead with you doing the PSL 1, the final one of L1.
Yeah.
So that's exciting times for Prescript as a brand. What else is on the horizon for you guys? What else can people get involved with you? And let's send some love your way.
Yeah. So level 1 next semester it starts January 29th. It's a 16-week course, puts people in line for a fall L2. So our level 3 obviously is, we kind of discussed briefly about the first iteration. So we run it January, Feb, where coaches come out, like level 2 coaches come out to Tampa Bay, Florida. And we kind of work as a team in a high stakes environment, training in January, February. We train NCAA, the highest ranked college students in American gridiron football to prepare them for the NFL Combine, and then which will then prepare them for the NFL Draft in April. We'll do an additional level 2 intake in what we call pre-OTA. So we'll have those athletes that were with us in January and February that, if we do our job right, they will get drafted to the NFL. They'll come with us and prepare to go into their first training camp alongside NFL veterans that we've had for, we've had NFL vets that are returning for their 9th and 10th season. So we have, a mix of the sort of the freshmen into the league coming out of the college, along with veterans if you guys are into American football. And the thing is that I don't want to stress is that it's not about sports. It's about consequences. It's about high stakes. It's about awareness. It's about attention. It's about it's about the environment, right? It's about the environment. It's about the external environment changing the internal demand and understanding that, look, whether you coach, busy professionals over the age of 35, or, whether you're 10 years into training, you're going to walk into this environment and it's going to bring out the best in you. It's going to test you across all levels of coaching, of the X's and O's, the technical and the tactical. So it's not about like people who want to get into strength and conditioning, although it is obviously a great sounding board test run of what that experience is like at the highest level. But that to me should be what coaching is at the highest level. And it really exposes people in a really like raw and visceral and sometimes uncomfortable way to their shortcomings in their business, but it shines such a clear light on what they're missing, right? Like, man, like I can't reach this person. It's like, are you reaching anyone? Mm-hmm. Are you reaching anyone with your check-ins or your Zoom calls or whatever? Like, you're in a room with a guy, going to look him square in the eye, and he's looking at you with the utmost trust that you're going to change not only his life, but potentially the life of, and look, the unfortunate reality of some of these athletes is that this 7-week window is the difference between going back to the unfortunate circumstances that they came from, or pulling their entire family out of abject poverty for generations to come. And they're looking at you with the trust. If you don't have that sense of urgency with the clients you work with every day, you should not be in this industry, period. If you don't have the respect enough to give a shit enough, if you just have clients on your roster that is paying your bills, get out, please. We don't want you here. Right. So that's what it is. And I feel the questions from people as the week was going on. Like a lot of the stuff got shared around because it is a unique offering in the space. And that's what I'm trying to get across is like, this is not at its core about training athletes. It's about recalibrating your passion with what you do every day. Cause you'll see it. Like when I'm there, dude, like it's the world could end and I wouldn't care. Right. Like it's so dynamic, the energy, like the potential. It's such a cool space, but it's like, that you can harvest that space. You can find whatever that room is for you, but I just don't think people have ever seen it. Like they've never seen people as excited about training, whether it be, you know, the staff that run it alongside me or whether it's the athletes there. Like cultivate that, recreate that. That's your room. That's your leverage. Whatever that feeling is that you get, that should be your environment every day. That's how you're going to progress. That's how your clients are going to progress. That's how your business is going to progress. Is like, what is the razor's edge of what you can tolerate, and fucking run on that edge, man. So, you know, it is, that would be my biggest thing is like, this is kind of, this is the hill that we die on, right? Like, you know, it's not, you know, we can talk about hypertrophy, body composition, nutrition. Yeah, we have an in-depth course, but the level 1, level 2, level 3 is like, we're here to make better coaches and we're here to put them in a position to change their external environment, to alter and change the internal demand so that they walk away as better coaches. And look, better doesn't necessarily just mean smarter.
Yeah. I think, not that anyone that's listening to this will need me to attest to this, but if you guys are interested, Jordan's authenticity piece is second to none. He kills it. And anytime that we've been on calls, it's always something that I leave with that call with me like, yeah, that was a fucking authentic interaction. And it's always been fun. So thank you for coming, bro. And let's rock tomorrow. Let's rock the next day. And I'm excited to see what's happening with this.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah, bro.